Namaste and a very good morning to all of you. I welcome you to my channel, The Outlier. My name is Mithun. In today's video, I'll be talking about maternal mortality ratio analysis. Even before I proceed to demonstrate maternal mortality ratio analysis, may I request you to subscribe to my channel, also like and share my videos. Let's begin by asking 5 important questions. What is MMR or maternal mortality ratio? Number 2, what are the goals set by United Nations for maternal mortality ratio? What is the importance of MMR in sustainable developmental goals? Number 4, what is India's current standing as far as MMR is concerned? And lastly, what are the efforts made by India to reduce MMR? Let's take this up one by one. First, what exactly is maternal mortality ratio? MMR refers to the number of maternal deaths per 1 lakh live births. I repeat, MMR refers to the number of maternal deaths per 1 lakh live births. This is a critical indicator of maternal health and healthcare quality. Let's now talk about what are the SDG targets set by United Nations. The SDG 3.1 aims to reduce the global maternal mortality ratio to less than 70 per 1 lakh. I repeat, to less than 70 per 1 lakh live births by 2030. Now, what is the importance of MMR in SDGs? Lowering the MMR is essential for achieving broader health, gender equality, developmental goals, reflecting improvements in medical care, access to services, and women's health. Number 4, what is India's current position for MMR? As per the latest data, India's MMR stands at around 103 per 1 lakh live births. There has been significant progress made by the government. However, there is a lot of improvement that is needed to meet the SDG targets. The fifth question is, what are some of India's efforts to reduce the MMR? There are initiatives like Janani Suraksha Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Surakshit Matritva Abhiyan, and increased institutional deliveries have contributed to the decline in MMR. In this video, I will be talking about the data analysis that I have conducted for the state of Karnataka. I have data for 31 districts and approximately 240 talukas of Karnataka. As you can see, these are some of the columns that I have. The first column is district. Then I have taluk. You have the urban population. Then you have the variable under 5 mortality rate per 1,000. Then you have a very important variable, which is maternal mortality rate per 1 lakh, followed by male literacy, female literacy, so on and so forth. There are approximately 70 different columns. I repeat, I have got 70 different columns in the data set. As you can see here, when I scroll to the right side, there are different columns like rural, state, highway, which is expressed in kilometers, so on and so forth. The sample size in this data is approximately 200. To get a richer perspective about this data, let's move to the metadata of this particular data. Let's now move to the metadata. Here you have 4 columns. One is serial number, variable category, variable name, and variable description. You can see at a very high level, we have information about income, death, literacy, primary health center, administrative division, demographic, economic, and education details. Let's now focus on some of the education or health related variables. As you can see, we have got information on total number of Anganwadi centers in rural areas, number of Anganwadi centers owned in rural areas, number of Anganwadi centers rented in rural areas. So this is good and solid data that we have to carry out data analysis. I have got at least 10 variables for geography. As you can see here, all these are geographic variables. We have the geographic area in square kilometers. Then we have geographic area in square kilometers specific to rural region, followed by total rural area in square kilometer. Further, I've got health statistics. There are important variables like children who are under breastfed, percentage of children of a certain age who have received a vitamin A dose, so on and so forth. The next set of variables that I have are healthcare related variables. Here you have information about public health centers in urban areas, the gap in public health centers in urban areas, required public health centers in urban areas, so on and so forth. Let's move on to the next set of variables, which are all related to healthcare. We have information about the total required number of PHCs or the total required number of public health centers. Next set of variables are all related to infrastructure. Here, I've got different variables. Primarily, I've got information on what is the length of national highways passing through the rural areas, length of state highways passing through rural areas, length of major district roads in rural areas. And last but not the least, I've got variables about living standards of people as well. Here you can see good variables like percentage of households using modern cooking fuel, percentage of households with access to a toilet, percentage of households with access to safe drinking water facilities. I've got one more set of variables here, that is the population or demographic related variables. You can see here, I've got variables like the population residing in urban areas, the population residing in total areas, and the total population. As you can see here, we have got 71 variables in the state of Karnataka for various districts and talukas. You've already seen the data. The first record corresponds to Kalburgi district. The next record corresponds to Chikmagalur, Kalburgi again. Then we have Dharwad, Hassan, Bangalore, Urban, Uttar Kannada, so on and so forth. The first thing that I've done is to perform time series analysis. Let me show you some of the interesting results that I've obtained for time series analysis. As you can see here, the first of the charts is for infant mortality rate analysis. In the x-axis, I have taken approximately 12 years of data starting from 2003 all the way up to 2014. And in the y-axis, I am evaluating infant mortality rate analysis. As you can see here, the central line of the box plot, this plot that you see is called as the box plot. In fact, to be more precise, it is called as the box and the whiskers plot. The central line represents the average or the median. The average line goes on decreasing year on year. As you can see, in the year 2003, there was the highest infant mortality rate, but in the subsequent year, the IMR or the infant mortality rate has reduced, which is a good sign. There's a second observation that you can make, which is the size of the box plot. The size of the box plot gives you the total variation. So there was a high degree of variation in the infant mortality rate in the year 2003. By the time we come to 2014, the size of the box plot reduces, indicating that the infant mortality rate has, the variation in the infant mortality rate has reduced. Let's now look at the crude birth rate. Again, I have taken roughly 12 years of data. You can see a box plot against each year. When we look at crude birth rate, it is the highest in the year 2003, and for the subsequent years, the average goes on reducing, indicating that the crude birth rate year on year in the state of Karnataka has reduced. So this is a simple trend analysis which indicates the degree of variation as well as the average infant mortality rate and the average crude birth rate. Let's now proceed to study another set of analysis. I'll be now showing you the heat map. This is the correlation matrix. I've taken a lot of variables here like maternal mortality rate per 1 lakh. I've also taken variables like urban population, rural population, male literacy, female literacy, so on and so forth. The numbers that you're seeing here are the correlation coefficients. Along the column, the same variables are repeating. Since the variable of interest here is maternal mortality rate per 1 lakh, I have color coded only the first row. As you can see, there are 3 shades. Wherever you see dark green color cells, it indicates that there is a strong positive correlation of the row variable with that of the column. Wherever you see dark red color, it means that there is a strong negative correlation with the respective variable. And wherever you see yellow colored cells, it means that the correlation is moderate and hence we can neglect it. Primarily, I was interested in studying what all factors are related to maternal mortality rate. As you can see here, there is one cell which has a strong positive correlation, but that is the correlation of maternal mortality rate with itself. And therefore, it is expected that we have a high correlation. Have a look at this number, minus 0.1. Along the column, it says under 5 mortality rate per 1,000. So there is a strong negative correlation of MMR per 1 lakh and under 5 mortality rate per 1,000. Let's proceed to the right side. There's another variable which is called as percentage of safe drinking water. There is a strong negative correlation of percentage of safe drinking water and maternal mortality rate analysis. What does this suggest? This suggests that as the percentage of safe drinking water goes up, the maternal mortality rate comes down. Very interesting analysis. The rest of the variables do not show a strong correlation. I would like to draw your attention to another very important variable, which is the per capita income variable. The correlation value is negative 0.1, indicating that there is a strong negative relationship of maternal mortality rate per 1 lakh with that of per capita income, which is expected. That is, as the income level goes up, maternal mortality rate will go down. Let's look at the next variable, which is mothers who consumed iron folic acid. As the percentage of mothers who have consumed iron folic acid increase, the maternal mortality rate per 1 lakh comes down. Last but not the least, we see a positive correlation of women in the age group of 15 to 14 who are anemic and that of MMR. That is, if you see a higher percentage of women in the age bracket of 15 to 14 years who suffer from anemia, you can expect the maternal mortality rate to go up. So these are certain high-level analysis and insights that we can obtain from maternal mortality rate analysis. So as of now, I've shown you the trend analysis, then the correlation analysis. Let's now proceed to look at literacy rate analysis. As you can see here, there is a bar chart. There are multiple bar charts that I've created. Let's first focus on the female literacy rate analysis. As you can see here, this is the female literacy rate analysis. I've used the mean statistic. Along the x-axis, you can see the different districts of Karnataka, and along the y-axis, you can see the percentage of literacy. I'd like to draw your attention to this tiny red color bar at the end. When you look at the x-axis, this is Yadgir. What does this tell? In the district of Yadgir, the literacy rate for females is the lowest. In fact, when you compare this with the y-axis, it is barely 40%. So in the district of Yadgir, the female literacy rate is very, very low. There's another district which is a cause of worry, which is the district of Raichur. I can also draw your attention to this blue color bar, which is for Koppal. What are some of the districts where the female literacy rate is at the higher level? Let me draw your attention to this particular bar, which is for Udupi. And here you can see a very tall green color bar, which is Dakshina Kannada. So what is the inference that we can draw from this graph? Dakshina Kannada and Udupi are doing well because they have more than 80% female literacy rate. However, there are districts like Raichur and Yadgir wherein the female literacy rate is low. Let's now proceed to study the male literacy rate. Here again, you can see a vertical bar chart. I have taken the different districts of Karnataka along the x-axis, and the y-axis, you can see the male literacy rate. The longest bar that I'm able to see is for Belgavi, which means that for the district of Belgavi, the male literacy rate is the highest. The shortest bar is for the district of Kodagu, indicating that the male literacy rate is the lowest for the district of Kodagu. Let's now look at some interesting tables. Here, we are looking at what is called as illiteracy. What is illiteracy? This is the opposite of literacy. I have taken some of the districts in the first column. You have total illiterate females, which is the second column, and the total illiterate males in the second column. Bangalore urban, Belgavi, and Kalburgi top the list with 14%, 8%, and 5% when it comes to illiterate females. What about illiterate males? Approximately 40% illiterate males can be found in Bangalore urban. Then we have approximately 5% illiterate males who can be found in Belgavi district, and approximately 2.5% illiterate males can be found in Kalburgi. So this slide, in fact, this sheet gives us a comprehensive analysis of the district-wise literacy rate broken down by gender. Let's now proceed to look at the next set of data. What I have done here is to study children health. As we are aware, the different districts of Karnataka are put in 4 major administrative divisions. The first metric that I'm trying to study here is children who are under breastfed. I've taken the percentage of children who are under breastfed in the y-axis and the 4 different headquarters, that is Belgavi, Bengaluru urban, Kalburgi, and Mysuru along the x-axis. As you can see, this is the box plot. We have 4 different administrative headquarters. Therefore, we are getting 4 different box plot. The highest number of children who are under breastfed belong to the headquarters of Mysore. So Mysore administrative division has the highest proportion of children who are under breastfed. Let's now proceed to look at the district-wise distribution of children who are under breastfed. You can see here, this column represents the districts. We have information on Chitradurga, Bidar, and Dakshina Kannada. And the second column refers to children who are under breastfed. Chitradurga district has the highest proportion of children who are under breastfed. The number is 76%. Very close to Chitradurga, you also have Bidar, Dakshina Kannada, Shimoga, and Chikmagalur, wherein the children who are under breastfed is quite high. What are some of the districts which are doing quite well? Here you can see Yadgir, Gadag, Kodagu, Vijaypura, and Ballari district, which are relatively better. Let's now talk about another important dimension when we speak about children's health. When we talk about children's health, here I've taken children with low birth weight analysis. I repeat, children with low birth weight analysis. Hassan district, Dharwad district, and Chikballapur district have a high proportion of children with low birth weight. Which are some of the districts which have a low proportion of children with low birth weight? Let me go to the last few records. We have Chitradurga, Vijaypura, and Tumkur district, wherein the proportion of children with low birth weight is lesser. Let's now look at the third dimension, which is children who have received vitamin dosage. Here you can see Bengaluru urban, Chitradurga, Davangere, Bengaluru rural, and Udupi district, where children who have received vitamin dosage is on the higher side. In fact, Bengaluru urban tops the list with 53%. Let me now scroll down. You can see some of the districts like Mandya, Ballari, Raichur, where the numbers are on the lower side. So this particular sheet gives us an insight about the health of children. Let's now proceed to the fifth dimension, which is demographic analysis. Here, I've looked at rural population and compared it with urban population for the administrative headquarters. When we look at the rural population, clearly you can see the number is on the y-axis. The different administrative headquarters like Belgavi, Kalburgi are on the x-axis. The tallest bar here is for Belgavi, which means that the percentage of rural population is the highest in Belgavi, followed by Kalburgi and Bengaluru urban. Let's now compare this with urban population. By and large, in fact, the trend completely changes here. Here, the longest bar is for Bengaluru urban, which is expected that we have the highest percentage of urban population in Bengaluru, followed by Belgavi and Kalburgi. Let me now scroll to the right side. What are we doing in this chart? You can see here, we are studying the per capita income analysis. Clearly, the first bar, that is the red color bar, tops the list. Let's look at the district which has the highest per capita income. This is Bengaluru urban. Then we have Dakshina Kannada, followed by Bengaluru rural. This gives us the distribution of the per capita income. So these three graphs, that is the bar chart, gives us the distribution of the population and per capita. Let's now proceed to look at the next dimension, which is infrastructure. When it comes to infrastructure, I've taken variables like percentage, my apologies. I've taken information like percentage of safe drinking water analysis. Similarly, I've taken percentage of access to toilets. The shortest bar would be the green bar, and here we have one more bar which is on the shorter side. So this would be the district with a low percentage of safe drinking water. It would be interesting to check which is this district. This is the district of Udupi, wherein you have a low percentage of safe drinking water. Similarly, you can see here the district of Dharwad also has a lower percentage of safe drinking water. Let me now proceed to show you the distribution of percentage of access to toilets. Which are those districts wherein you have a low percentage of access to toilets? As you can see here, the shortest bar here is for Kalburgi, which means that barely 40% there is 40% access to toilets in the district of Kalburgi. I also see that Yadgir district is not doing that well. Which are those districts which are doing well? Bengaluru urban is doing quite well. You also see Udupi district doing quite well when it comes to percentage of access to toilets. Let's move to the next item when it comes to infrastructure analysis. Here, I'm considering the percentage of electricity. We've looked at percentage of access to safe drinking water, percentage of access to toilets. Now, let's look at percentage of access to electricity. By and large, it looks like all the districts have reasonably high percentage of access to electricity. Looks like Chitradurga tops the list here. Let's now proceed to the next variable, which is the percentage of access to electricity. Here, this histogram talks about the percentage of access to electricity. The longest bar here is 99, which means that majority of the districts have a high percentage of access to electricity. I've also created two small tables which show us the distribution of the variable, that is percentage of electricity, for different districts and talukas. When you look at Bengaluru urban, here you see that Bengaluru north as well as Bangalore east, followed by Yelahanka, which have the highest percentage of electricity. In fact, the trend continues for other districts like Haveri, Chikballapur, and Dakshina Kannada as well. These are some of the names of the taluk which have a very high percentage of electricity. Let's now focus on those talukas which have a low percentage of electricity. It's very, very interesting to see that Srirangapatna has a number of 97%. So this is the access of electricity. Srirangapatna, then you have Rona Taluk, then there are other talukas as well, like Babaleshwar, you have Shabada, wherein the percentage of electricity is slightly on the lower side. Let's move on to the next analysis. Here, I've looked at the percentage of access to modern cooking fuel. In the x-axis, I have taken Belagavi, Bangalore urban, Kalburgi, and Mysore. What tops the list would be Bengaluru urban and Mysore, which have the highest percentage of access to modern cooking fuel. So in this slide, what we have seen is a comprehensive analysis of the distribution of safe drinking water, access to toilets, electricity, and other important variables. Let's now focus on mortality rate analysis. Here, I'm studying under 5 mortality rate analysis. In the x-axis, we have under 5 mortality rate per 1,000, and the y-axis, we have the percent. Looks like the 10 to 20 is the one which is the highest. Let's now focus on the distribution of maternal mortality per 1 lakh. This is a very important variable for our analysis. Belgavi district is the district which has the highest maternal mortality per 1 lakh, followed by Kalburgi and Dakshina Kannada. Let's now look at maternal mortality rate per 1 lakh collectively for the state of Karnataka. Here, I have not broken this down by district. On an average, it looks like MMR for Karnataka is around 50. There are few outliers which are shown here as far as maternal mortality rate in the state of Karnataka is concerned. Let's now study which is the district and taluk which has the highest MMR. Looks like Manvi taluk has the highest MMR. Similarly, you can see Sakleshpur and other places like Shorapur, which have a high MMR. If you want to check district-wise distribution of MMR, this box plot would definitely help you. What I've done here is take the different districts of Karnataka in the x-axis and MMR per 1 lakh along the y-axis. When it comes to the average, I can confidently say that Dharwad is the one district which has the highest MMR. When it comes to the lowest value, looks like Bidar, Chitradurga, as well as to a large extent, you have Vijayanagara district, wherein the MMR is relatively on the lower side. Let's do one more analysis on this. This is the district-wise MMR analysis broken down by the headquarters. Clearly, the average is the highest for Belgavi, which means that the district with the highest MMR per 1 lakh is Belgavi. When you look at Mysore, Mysore is doing relatively well because the MMR is on the lower side. Let's now focus to look at the box plot of under 5 mortality rate per 1000. We have considered the different administrative headquarters. The lowest value here is Belgavi when it comes to under 5 mortality rate per 1000. So in this sheet, what we have seen is mortality rate analysis at an overall level as well as broken down by different districts. Let's now proceed to look at mother's health condition. There are different variables that I've taken here. I've taken the average of women's age between 15 to 14 who are suffering from anemia. Looks like Udupi tops the list, followed by Koppal and Chikmagalur. When you look at the lower values, this belongs to Chitradurga district, Davangere and Dakshina Kannada. They are doing well when it comes to average of women's age, average women age that is between 15 and 14 who are anemic. Let's now look at the top 10 district wherein the folic acid consumption is high. Raichur, Dakshina Kannada and Davangere are doing well. Bengaluru urban, Chitradurga and Chikmagalur are not doing so well. Let's look at another dimension here. The bottom 10 districts when it comes to consumption of iron folic acid. You have districts like Mandya, Yadgir, Kodagu, which are doing not so good. Let's study another dimension here, which is percentage of mothers with 4 or more antenatal care visits. We are looking at the percentage of mothers with 4 or more antenatal care visits. As before, I've taken the different districts and I've considered the parameter that is mothers with percentage of mothers with 4 or more antenatal care visits. Looks like the district of Chikmagalur is doing quite well. Gadag is also doing quite well. The shortest bar that I see is Vijayanagara. Let's look at one more dimension now, that is percentage of mothers with 4 or more antenatal care visits. But this is based on the administrative headquarters. The longest bar is Bengaluru urban and Mysuru. The district Belgavi and Kalburgi are on the shorter side. So this sheet speaks about mother's health condition. We have taken different parameters like folic acid consumption and the percentage of women who are anemic. The last of the analysis that I have done is a clustering. I'm just showing you the output of clustering. I've tried to club the districts based on their performance into 3 groups. The best performing district I'm calling as group 1. The worst performing district I'm calling as group 2, and the district which is performing moderately I'm calling as group 3. There's only one member when it comes to the best, which is Bengaluru urban, which is expected. When it comes to not so good performance, you have Belgavi, Kalburgi, Mysore, Tumkur, Vijaypura, and those districts with a moderate performance. Some of the districts here are listed like Bagalkot, Ballari, Bengaluru Rural, Bidar, so on and so forth. Why do I say that this is the best district? The first parameter that I'm looking at is maternal mortality rate per 1 lakh. Here you see for Bengaluru urban, the average is 344. When you look at group 2, it is 846, which is the highest. Similarly, when you look at the third number, which is 455, it is the second highest. So the best performing district would be Bengaluru urban, and the worst performing districts, you can see Belgavi, Kalburgi, Mysuru, so on and so forth. Let's look at urban population. As expected in group 1, you have a higher number. I've also considered some of the other parameters like male literacy and female literacy. When it comes to male literacy, the biggest number that I'm seeing here is 906, which is group 2. You may ask me why have I called this as the worst performing districts. I'm using the word worst only when it comes to MMR, not with respect to other parameters. In fact, for male literacy rate as well as for female literacy rate, group 2 is doing a lot better. You can also analyze per capita income, the proportion of literacy, so on and so forth for each of these districts. This is not the final analysis. This requires more brainstorming before we can make a final decision. The purpose of doing this analysis was purely academic. I repeat, the purpose of doing this analysis was purely academic. And I request the audience to take it in the spirit in which it is done. So thank you very much for your time. With this, I have come to the end of today's video. In today's video, we have seen maternal mortality rate analysis, the different dimensions of maternal mortality rate analysis. I hope you have enjoyed this particular video. Thank you very much for watching this video. Once again, do subscribe to my channel, like and share my videos. Have a great day ahead.